Last week, I came back from a trip that I took to Thailand. And while I was there, I met this really nice German lady, about 67 years old, and she told me that after working 45 years as a secretary, she was fed up and she told her boss that she was leaving. So she started traveling the world. And she told me that one of her biggest regrets was that she didn't do it sooner. And that just got me thinking. We are taught to work until we are 65 and then we get to do what we want. But what if we don't want to do that? What if we want to do all of that stuff now? And that reminded me of the book The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. So I decided to break some of the ideas down for you guys just in case you're not 67 yet and you don't want to have that same regret. So let's get started. First idea, understand your fears. One of the things that Tim Ferriss talks about, and I think is very important, is to define and understand your fears. Think about the worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that can happen if you decide that you want to live on your own terms? Think about a worst case scenario scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is being completely inconsequential and 10 being catastrophic and unfixable. You'll find that it's not as bad as we probably think. I mean, you might lose a job that you hated anyways, or you might get some disapproving looks from people who aren't even chasing their own purpose, but it is likely that your consequences are not as bad as they look and will be fixable. And that is if your worst case scenario actually happens. Think about the alternative. Work until you're 65 and regret that you didn't do what you wanted sooner. One of the book's biggest ideas is to create automatic income. And Tim gives amazing insights on how to actually achieve that. So let's talk about basic entrepreneurship. You can resell a product, you can create your own product, or you can sell a license. So now you start creating your business. Now, how do we start running this business with the least amount of work possible? One of the first things that you should work on is elimination. Think about a job. Being busy is a good thing in a job. Bosses look at you and they say, such a good worker, let's give him a raise. But when it comes to a business, especially a self-sustaining one, being busy is far from the goal. So I want you to forget about efficiency for now, because performing an unimportant task efficiently doesn't make it important. That's why the elimination of tasks that don't produce any value is very important. You can use the 80-20 principle to help with this, because remember, 20% of the things you do bring 80% of the results you want, and vice versa. And a little trick that you can do to force elimination is to understand the Parkinson's law, which states that a task will take as much time as you give it. So if you give a task 8 hours, it'll take 8 hours. But if you give it only 3, your brain switches gears and eliminates the things that aren't absolutely necessary. The next idea is to remove yourself as the bottleneck of the business. Let's say that you own a hot dog stand, for example, and you are the only one running it. At this point, you are the bottleneck of the business, because there's always a limit on the things that you can physically do on your own. For example, let's say that 200 customers woke up at the same time, and you can only help one at a time, so the rest will probably get impatient and leave. But let's say that you hire 10 people. Now you're able to help a lot more customers at the same time, and you are no longer the bottleneck of the business. And this is one of the ways that you can actually scale a business to handle more customers and create more profit. Let's say that your business is growing, so you build more hot dog stands and hire more people. Here, you can actually remove yourself from the labor, and you can focus on things like marketing your business to bring in even more clients, or take a vacation. Think about McDonald's. The restaurant is usually run by younger people, but the company takes care of the training, the marketing, and the more value-producing tasks. The next idea is outsourcing. Outsourcing means to delegate portions of work to an outside source instead of completing it within the business. In the book, Tim talks about 2 main things that you can outsource. You can outsource your business, and you can outsource your life. I recommend outsourcing your business before you start outsourcing your life. As I explained before, you can outsource labor in order to focus on higher value tasks. Or you can also outsource if you don't have the resources to complete a task on your own. Here's an example of how I got my brother to create his own business. My brother has a hobby where he creates cool graphic designs in his spare time. So I told him, why not create t-shirts with those designs on them? So he hired a company that not only takes care of the making and printing of the shirts, but also the shipping and customer service. So he was able to outsource some of the most tedious parts of the business, like the shipping and handling and the making of the t-shirts. And by outsourcing, he was able to focus just on the things that he likes doing, which is making the designs. Also, he didn't have to raise any capital to buy a t-shirt printer, so he was able to start his business with very little capital, because he's able to share profits with the t-shirt makers. And the last idea is to understand the difference between absolute income and relative income. The book makes a big effort to emphasize that you don't need to be a millionaire to live the lifestyle that only millionaires are perceived to have. There's actually a benefit from not making a lot of money. Let me explain. Let's say that John makes $60,000 a year and Steve makes $150,000 a year. Now, who is richer? Of course, Steve seems a lot richer because he makes almost 3 times as much money as John. But what if I tell you John only works 10 hours a week while Steve works 80? Now you see the difference. John makes $125 an hour while Steve makes only $39 an hour. Now let's take it a little further. Let's say that Steve has to stay in New York, one of the most expensive cities in the US, because he has his job there. And John, he can go anywhere he desires. In New York, Steve pays $2,300 for a nice apartment, while John pays $600 to rent a beach house overseas. See, the main idea of the book is not to help you earn as much money as possible, but to achieve the most results with the least amount of work possible, to help you become free and flexible to do anything you want. And those are just some of the ideas that I got from the 4-Hour Work Week.